welcome to Let's Be Frank. Our latest theme is to do something lighthearted and then something heavy and then something lighthearted. So this one might be heavy. We have chosen to talk about redemption. Um,
Mm.
Maybe I'll start with you because you've just told me that you got the definition of redemption. So maybe that's a good place for us to start and then.
Okay. Um, so redemption can have different meanings depending on the context, obviously, religious and spiritual. In many religious contexts, redemption refers to the act of saving or delivering a person from sin or evil, often through divine intervention or atonement. It's the process of seeking forgiveness or salvation. And then the next one is financial. In finance, redemption refers to the process of repaying or cashing in an investment. And then I think the one that's going to be most appropriate is the personal one.
Yeah.
So, redemption, in a personal sense, in a personal context, can mean the act of improving oneself or making amends for past mistakes, often with the goal of becoming a better person. So that is the meaning of redemption.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe can I just quickly run through that definition of
Yeah.
personal redemption
Yeah.
again? Redemption in a personal context can mean the act of improving oneself or making amends for past mistakes, often with the goal of becoming a better person. Is there anything in particular that stand out to you in that definition?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, the first thing is acknowledging that you're not a good person to want to make amends for or become a better person. Um, I'm curious what you're looking for in that in that definition. I've got a lot of thoughts on this topic.
Yeah, so look, the assumption that you made there that you were not a good person
Yeah.
to start off with, I don't quite think that is true.
Well, it goes back to that whole whose definition of a good person.
Correct.
Presumably, in this context, it's society's definition of a good person.
Mm,
And we spoke about this before. Like, does anyone really think that they're a bad person? Probably not. Most people think that what they're doing is good at the time.
yeah. So look, I mean, the basic definition makes sense in terms of, well, making amends for past
Yeah.
mistakes. Um, I just don't like the idea of the goal of becoming a better person
Yeah.
that is snuck in there, because that's not necessarily true, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, be, be, before I ask your, because you said you have many thoughts on
Mm-hmm.
this. So, the way that I see it is redemption is when it's seen from a specific view.
Yeah.
If if I um, did something and I want to fix it, I must redeem myself.
Yeah.
If I did something to you and I want to make amends for that, I've got to change some behavior,
Yeah.
and I've got to say, um, Ali, I'm so sorry I did that. I didn't mean to do that, or whatever the reason is. I am now a better person. What is the thing that follows? So to me, that it's like two sides of a coin. Redemption is the one side, and then the other side is forgiveness.
Hmm. Yeah.
I don't think that you can really separate the two. Now, it gets a lot more complex when you talk about at what level, but I think what we're referring to mostly refers to something that somebody did.
Yeah.
And then in relation to what is our relationship with that person. In other words, if it is just some um, well-known sports star that did something terrible,
Yeah.
which means I don't necessarily respect that person anymore, well, I don't really feel like I have to forgive that person,
Yeah.
even if he or she redeems himself in terms of what they did. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Whereas if it's in closer proximity, in other words, either friends or family, etc., then the other side of the coin for me, the forgiveness, comes a hell of a lot more into play.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on redemption?
Like I say, I've got lots of thoughts on redemption. Um, I've been thinking about it mostly from like a criminal perspective. So someone committing a crime. Um, I think about this a lot because um, I am one of those people, and we've had this discussion a few times in the past, who believes that people can change and have remorse for things that they've done in the past, and understand that what they did was wrong, and then have the potential at correcting it. Um, the one thing that I don't often say when I'm thinking of these things is that there still have to be consequences for actions. So I'm not saying
Mm.
like we forgive everyone for the bad that they did because they say, sorry, I made a mistake, forgive me. Um, because then there would be complete anarchy, and it would set a precedent that that's okay to do and you don't have to be punished for it if you say you're sorry. Um, so
Which is how many children are raised.
yeah,
Am I correct?
yeah, well, um, in a religious context, it's ask for forgiveness and you'll be forgiven. You know, acknowledge that you did something wrong or that you said something wrong, um, and then it's okay. um, so yeah, I'm a firm believer that there have to be consequences for actions, especially criminal actions. Murderers should be punished for murdering. Um, but then I have this is a I don't know if it's a very personal thing, but I do feel like often there's a reason that someone was led to do that thing. Um, Maybe psychologically, or maybe something to do with how they were raised, or something that triggered them. Um, and if the person is remorseful and if they acknowledge that the act that they did was wrong, then I think that there's a path to redemption there, and that they can be redeemed. Um, but that's not to say that they shouldn't be punished for their actions. I don't know if that's making sense.
Yeah, I think it's very complicated because if you look at the example of crime,
Yeah,
there are so many different types of crime, so many different levels of crime, and obviously any criminal that is caught knows that well, to get off with a lighter sentence, in other words, less consequences, I have to say sorry,
yeah.
or I have to promise I'll never do that again, or whatever the case may be. And it becomes difficult to evaluate or to test whether that is true or not.
Yeah,
But also, I mean, if you talk about murder, that in itself is already a very complicated thing because was there, I don't know, a whole bunch of reasons that may have led to that, or was it just cold-blooded murder?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like we unfortunately see quite a lot of at the moment, farmers are being attacked and killed for no other reason. So, in other words, there wasn't provocation, etc., etc. It, I mean, and there's a lot of that senseless type of violence. The most frequent one is a couple of days ago, two teenagers that stole a car and just ran over a pensioner on a bicycle for the hell of it.
Mm.
And it's on video, etc., etc.
Mm.
It's so it's all very complicated in terms of the the circumstances, etc. What led to that? But in principle, I think I agree with you that everybody should be able to redeem themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what made me start thinking about the other side of it, the forgiveness.
Yeah.
And how important is it to somebody that has done the crime and done the time to then, okay, cool, I've redeemed myself and I'm now an upstanding citizen. Well, that doesn't really help much if I'm still being shunned by my family, by my
Yeah.
friends, by my ex-colleagues, or whatever the case may be. And that's why the forgiveness is an integral part of that for me.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I think the part that I struggle with quite a bit is the inconsistencies in the application of the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
Now that will obviously vary from country to country, and so
But it'll be inconsistent worldwide. That's
it is
yeah.
very inconsistent.
Yeah.
I think I think there are very few countries where you can say that there's a, a, a very fair and consistent application of the
Yeah.
laws.
Yeah.
And that for me is problematic, but I can't really say that that statement has anything to do with redemption.
Yeah. I was gonna say to take things lighter just for a minute because it's so relevant right now is the Rugby World Cup. Um, there's inconsistency in the application of the law in
Yep.
that game, and they also talk about mitigating or redeeming circumstances when there's a foul play or whatever. And it's just interesting that even on that level where it's not as big a deal, it's a rugby match, that there is still that inconsistent application of the laws, and there is still a subjective decision of is that a mitigating circumstance. So I'm talking about like a head contact tackle or whatever.
Yeah.
And they review it and they have an independent reviewer and it's still inconsistent. But then the part that I wanted to get to is kind of the forgiveness aspect of it, where after the game, those rugby players, even the ones who had head contact, will go and shake hands and have a hug and forgive each other and walk off the field, and it's done and forgotten about by them in that circumstance. But then obviously there's still reviews and things that happen afterwards, and the general public that likes to weigh in on every single decision that was made. So I'm just saying the inconsistency in application of the law is common in every application of it. Like it's so where I'm going to with the statement is there's been talk about having like AI or computer. I'm
What
just I'm just thinking about like an independent third party who doesn't have the feelings and the personal connection to the application of the law. Anyway, that's
Well, whose AI are you
yeah,
going to? Because there are already so many inconsistencies.
yeah,
Um, the funny little incident is that I saw the other day, which has got nothing to do with redemption,
we'll get
but
back to it.
we'll get back to it, is somebody that asked, I think it was ChatGPT, I'm not sure which of the AI, may have been Bard or
Yeah.
whoever, um, you know, do you have access to my location? And the answer is no, I do not have. As a large language model, I do not have access to your location. And kind of gave very consistent answer 3 times in a row, etc. And then the next question was, where's the nearest McDonald's to me? And immediately it got an address.
Yeah,
so, so AI is not very good. It's not a very consistent liar,
yeah.
even at this point. So,
Well, I
but
also in this conversation I asked ChatGPT after a few questions. I said, "How do you feel about?" And I went into the death penalty. I said, "How do you feel about the death penalty?" And I just always I knew what the response was going to be.
yeah,
I don't have personal feelings or opinions.
yeah.
Yeah,
So, I mean, so far you focused on redemption in relation to a criminal act.
yeah,
But really, most of the redemption and forgiveness that we deal with sits outside of the law.
yeah. Um,
So, I'm trying to think of an example. Say I play golf every week with the same 3 guys.
yeah,
There's something really annoying about what I do, uh, either break my clubs or inconsiderate, etc. Could be anything.
mm-hmm.
Um, to the point where they say, listen, we're not inviting you anymore. It's not pleasant to play with you anymore for whatever. I can then say, wow, why didn't you guys just tell me?
Mm.
So I can go and work on that, stop throwing my clubs or whatever. And I can then come back to the guys and say, hey guys, give me another chance.
Mm-hmm.
I really miss playing with you, etc. I went to anger management or whatever classes. I no longer throw my clubs.
Yeah,
So you see what I mean? That I think that there are far more of those types of examples
mm-hmm.
where I have potentially redeemed myself if the guys then say, yeah, well, okay, cool. Give us the names of the guys that you played golf with in the last month. We'll speak to them, or we will actually give you a chance on Saturday morning. We'll play together and we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I can redeem myself.
Yeah,
And then it's up to them to forgive me and accept me back into the group.
yeah,
The same in all spheres or aspects of life. There are these incidents that happen with all of us.
mm-hmm.
Now, think between parents and children. I think that there are quite a lot of those.
Yeah. Siblings.
Siblings, friends,
Yeah,
partners, colleagues, all the way through. So I think that that number is number of cases or incidents where people have been wronged and one person has to redeem or become the better person or improve the behavior or whatever, and then it's up to another person or people to forgive.
Yeah.
I think that is so much part of our lives that we don't really even notice or recognize it.
Yeah.
Do you think that everybody should be given a chance, or is everybody is
Redeemable.
in other words, do I have to forgive somebody even
No.
if they redeemed themselves?
No. I mean, no one has to do anything unless we don't have free will. um,
Yeah.
no.
So in other words,
Yeah.
but do you think that society is just a group of people. Do you think that communities will, let's say, for example, my neighbor parks on my pavement and damages my prize daffodils? I don't know. Which I think is very inconsiderate and whatever the case may be. The neighbor comes over and says, I'm really sorry I did that. I say, well, you're an asshole. In my
Yeah.
book, it's not going to change.
Yeah.
Will the rest of the neighborhood think that I'm the asshole? Because he did say sorry and it wasn't a repeat offense or that's what I mean by, so I agree with the statement that you said nobody is or should be forced to do anything they don't want to.
Yeah.
I feel quite strongly about that is that even if somebody supposedly redeems themselves, it's still my prerogative whether I want to. And I suppose that it's a little bit more complicated than that. It's not just a question of forgiveness, because by forgiving somebody doesn't mean like I'm going to
Become best buds.
become best buds again.
Yeah.
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 What prompted you to think about redemption as a topic?
Um, there was the topical Russell Brand story where he's been very open about that he was an addict, a sex addict, and he was very promiscuous in his younger years, and he was a drug addict, and probably 10-15 years ago, and he appears to have turned his life around since those days. Now he's quite like zen, and he does ice baths, and he calls out people in government, and he helps a lot of women's charities, and he does a lot of good in the world. And now it's come out that during his bad years, let's call them that, he allegedly sexually abused or raped a few women. So obviously him helping out a few women's charities, I don't even want to talk about him specifically, but just the situation.
Yeah.
So say he did commit rapes and sexual assaults 15 years ago and has since turned his life around, maybe acknowledges that he did terrible things and now does a lot of good in the world. He should still be punished for bad actions in the past, should he? I mean, and what does that mean, and what is a reasonable punishment for what he allegedly did? And then, I mean, by all look, he is a completely different person to who he was back then. So is this person supposed to pay for the crimes of a different person? I suppose it's not technically a different person, it is him. But uh, it just brought up all of these questions. And then, I mean, that's not even going into, like, can it be proven? Did it really happen?
Yeah.
All of those things. But it's kind of
No,
just
no,
thinking
no. I
about the
fully
fact that
understand.
if
Yeah.
it did happen, should the man today have to pay for those crimes? And what is payment for those crimes?
Mm.
And is
And
the
how
way
does
he's
he
turned his
redeem
life around,
himself?
yeah, is the way he's already turned his life around
Correct, correct.
redemption for the crimes that he committed
Okay.
back then? I just.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I understand
Yeah.
what prompted this kind of thinking of redemption and what is redemption? What does it look like, you know? And I think, as you said, you know, I mean, this is just one of, I mean, so many cases.
Yeah.
So it's just the most current one,
Yes.
and therefore we refer to that. But there are many, many, many
Yeah.
examples of that.
And again, the thoughts are I'm quite removed from it. I don't know Russell Brand personally, although my friend met him at one of his events a few weeks ago. Said he
Okay.
was a lovely guy. I don't know him personally, and I wasn't involved. And if it had been a family member or a friend that had been involved in the sexual assaults years ago, I might also feel very differently. And if I knew him personally, if I went to his event, maybe I would also feel differently. I don't know him, but just looking at the way that people respond and react to what is coming out and trying to figure out like what is right. I don't know.
Yeah, look, that's another conversation
Yeah.
about, you know, what of this should actually be speculated about, and who should actually have opinions about these things without knowing the actual facts, etc. And whether that is Russell Brand or any of the other kind of, it's almost like these, I don't know, it's not quite daily, but very, very frequent, depending on where you look in the world, that there is a similar type of case where um, allegations come out about a public figure
Mm-hmm.
of sorts, and so on and so forth. Um, but yeah, you ask interesting questions about, you know, the time that has elapsed, about how does one prove that he or she has redeemed themselves in terms of the person they were versus the person that they are now. And then it becomes that very quickly you can go to the people in glass houses,
Yeah.
um, story, because I don't think that there's a human on the planet that can say that they didn't do something out of line, out of order at any point of time in their
Yeah.
life. Definitely not putting it in the same magnitude of the current
Accusations.
allegations.
Yeah.
And yet we all feel that like we discussed before, people feel like they grow and they change and that they become better people, or that there are different facts that will make them think or behave in a different way, etc., etc. So I'm all for redemption. I don't think you can just say, well, you're an asshole once and that's it.
Yeah.
I think that flip side of the coin, you know, the forgiveness, it's more where um, it's very polarizing in terms of different groups of people with either different views or political orientation or affiliation, etc., etc., whether they are going to be even even open to the idea of forgiving an individual.
Yeah.
Like you said, you're actually so far removed from this thing, and yet everybody is expecting everyone to have an opinion about this.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's fascinating, and it shows how I think divided society is at the moment,
Yeah.
and how quickly and easily people can be riled up and
Without
take
knowing all the
sides.
facts. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Um, and that for me is almost like the bigger danger to look at in terms of what the hell is happening, you know.
Yeah.
This is um, I don't know, this is tension. And people are frustrated and upset. Sometimes they know why, but they don't necessarily put their energy and effort into solving those particular issues.
Yeah.
And then, but there's always something to latch on to
Yeah.
vent, and I don't know. That's just my take about it. I mean, why in this particular case, and a number of others that have happened over the last couple of years, you know, people that have been um, absolutely slaughtered in um, in the media, whether it's the more traditional media or social media, with with very little facts
Yeah.
to back up the claims and so on. Let's give people an opportunity to redeem themselves.
This is my thinking, and I think it comes down to I do think there need to be consequences for actions, especially actions that hurt other people. I'm still battling with what are reasonable and appropriate consequences for certain actions, and um, I think it's something that I need to explore a bit more. And I think that's what we always talk about, is kind of be curious and keep asking questions and keep investigating, and don't just jump on an us or them bandwagon and pick a side
Mm.
and run with it without kind of doing the work and figuring out the whole story, which I know we'll never know the whole story, but I think it's good practice to try and seek it. It reminds me of that term that we used to talk about a lot, which is engaging in unfiltered, passionate debate in pursuit of the truth. And I think that's also
Yeah,
kind of what we try to do in these little uh, kind of informal sessions every week, is find the truth, which we may never find, but just keep looking for it.
yes, pursue the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Unfiltered, passionate debate in pursuit of the truth. Yeah, thanks, Herman. It was nice to hear your thoughts on this. I had a long chat with ChatGPT, which I was going to bring up, but actually, I think we've covered most of what I wanted to talk about. My first question to ChatGPT was, "Is anyone beyond redemption?" um,
ooh,
and obviously, he skirted around the issue because he doesn't have any feelings or opinions on anything. but but it was just interesting. He obviously comes back to it's a matter of perspective and varies case by case, and I think that's also something that we need to think about is no two situations are ever the same. So we can't have the same punishment for every wrong act. There needs to be kind of some kind of look at it on a case by case basis. But yeah, we'll keep seeking the truth.
yeah. I think the thing that really stands out for me in terms of our discussion today is the um, consistent application of the law and the applicable punishments.
Yeah. Maybe another chat for another day. Uh,
Yes.
and I like talking about it in a less serious context, like sport, rugby. I'm sure we could look at tennis, golf. There's
Yeah.
probably a lot of ways that we can look at the consistent application of the law in kind
Oh,
of
yes.
those less serious
Yeah.
contexts.
Don't you think, just kind of while we're on the rugby thing, is that if you slow it down enough in a very physical game like rugby, don't you think that if you look at that thing in slow motion enough, that you can find, I mean, enough incidents where almost all the players in both sides at the end of the game will end up with a red card?
Yeah,
It,
it
it, it
is.
feels like we kind of like going overboard with
Yep.
this.
So I actually thought that, in obviously a bit biased, but in the most recent South African game where they said that one of our players blocked someone just before the
Mm,
try line, it looked
correct.
like it when they slowed it down, like he stood there for a long time in the way. But when you look at it
Yes.
in actual time, he just like moved out of the way
Yes.
really quickly. So,
Correct.
yeah, yeah,
So um, I'm all for using the technology in sport, and I think we see it in quite a few sports being applied more and more. Feels to me like tennis is the one where it's most consistently applied.
yeah,
Because it's very cut and dry.
yeah,
It's either in or it's out.
yeah,
You get X number of chances. Cricket, very similar. It doesn't feel like, it's especially with rugby now, these after the game, like you said, these guys
yeah,
they shook hands, they had a couple of beers together, they exchanged jerseys
yeah,
and all of that. They good. Um, anyway, so it is fascinating to see where that's going to end up. I do understand the stakes.
yeah.
I
Head
mean, it
injuries.
is,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, that too. But so I just would like them to get the balance right
yeah,
and the consistent application thereof. It seems to me like there's too much still of human interpretation.
definitely. Yeah, definitely. I'm keen to
Let's
talk
hope
about this
the
some more.
let's hope that the rugby powers can redeem themselves after a few of these
Yeah,
incidents.
yeah, definitely. Cool. Thank you so much, Herman.
Excellent.
Chat next week.
Cool. Cheers, Ali.